Benny Greb ha sacado un libro nuevo que se llama Práctica Efectiva para Músicos. Y la verdad que es un libro impresionante porque te da tips para que puedas llevar tu estudio al siguiente nivel. Y como no, me ha invitado a que conozca de primera mano en qué consiste ese Drum Camp. Así que me he ido hasta Alemania y quiero compartirlo contigo. Así que quédate conmigo y acompáñame a este increíble viaje a Hamelburg. ¡Vamos para allá! Bueno, pues son las 5:30 de la mañana y bueno, hoy lo que voy a hacer es que me voy a ir al tren. Vamos a comenzar el viaje, voy a cogerme el tren desde aquí, desde Viena, y haremos una parada antes de llegar a Hamelburg, que es donde allí me recogerían para llevarme al sitio donde va a ser el Drum Camp con Benny. Así que yo espero que, bueno, no solamente que me acompañéis, sino que encima que también lo disfrutéis. Así que, chao, nos vemos en un ratito. Vamos a entrar al recinto, ¿vale? O sea que espero que lo veáis bien. Vamos a ver. Bueno, pues estos van a ser los próximos 3 días aquí. Oh, ¿y estas 2 baterías? Ayer, para que os hagáis una idea, empezamos a las 9:30 de la mañana y terminamos a las 11:15 de la noche. O sea, ayer yo caí en la cama que parecía, vamos, eso, pues peso muerto ahí, ¡pam! ¿Sabes? Hasta hoy. Bueno, ahora que Benny se ha ido, aprovecho para sentarme aquí en su batería. Claro que sí, ¿por qué no? Vamos a hacer el vídeo desde la batería de Benny Greb. Entonces, ¿qué es lo que hemos hecho ayer? Pues ayer hemos hecho un montón de cosas, sobre todo pues basándonos, como ya os he dicho, en el libro. Estamos aquí, ahora os enseñaré el sitio exactamente, cómo estamos colocados, las 2 bates, bueno, en fin, todo lo que nosotros podemos ver aquí, que nos han preparado la organización del Drum Camp, para que nosotros podamos, bueno, pues estar lo más cómodo posible. Entonces, pues ayer hemos trabajado ciertos ejercicios que nos ayudan ya no solamente a nosotros mismos, sino también a que nosotros podamos coger y podamos, digamos, trabajar con nuestros alumnos, porque al final eso también es importante. Si te dedicas a dar clases y demás, hay muchas cosas que, al igual que funcionan contigo, pues también van a funcionar con tus alumnos. Entonces eso los puedes poner también en práctica. Aparte después ejercicios que nos ayudan a desarrollar sobre todo la concentración a la hora de nosotros estar estudiando y demás. Ya sabéis algo importantísimo que lo quiero recalcar una vez más, y es que en la descripción del vídeo vais a tener el link completo para que podáis entrar y podáis comprar el libro en español, que ya os digo, ya no tenéis ninguna excusa para poder coger y decir, es que no me voy a leer porque está en inglés o está en alemán. No pasa nada, está en español. Entonces, bueno, ayer ha sido otro día largo. antes de ayer, el martes, fue un día, pues ya os digo que terminamos a las 11:30, ayer hemos terminado como a las 10:30, y la verdad que lo que es el sitio, los compañeros que están aquí, todos muy buena onda, y la verdad que trabajar o estando aquí con Benny, viendo un poco cómo él desarrolla los ejercicios y demás, la verdad que es una pasada. Así que si tenéis oportunidad de asistir a algún camp, oye, pues ya sabéis que esta es una buena opción. Bueno, pues estamos aquí con Benny Greb. Benny Greb, muchísimas gracias por estar viéndonos y tal. Nada, deciros que vamos a hablar un poquito del libro y aparte pues también pues, bueno, le vamos a preguntar ciertas cosas a Benny que nos va a responder aquí. Entonces, Benny, thank you so much for accept my interview here.
Big pleasure.
Thank you for inviting me at your drum camp.
Wow, yes, this is a great question because I think the situation is now that you have a lot of offer. There is a lot of things that you could do and should do maybe, and there is so much on the internet now of things to do and stuff. So I receive a lot of this feedback of like, there's so much stuff to do, but what is the right thing for me? And I think the answer is that you have to kind of find out what you want first. And if you kind of define like, okay, this is where I want to go, this is something that I want, this is something that I find nice, then it defines, okay, what fits that goal, right? If you lean back and say like, show me what can be done, well, there's a lot of stuff out there that you could do potentially, but you can of course waste a lot of time doing a little bit of that and a little bit of that. And if you do a little bit of digging, and the book helps a little bit with that, to be like, you know what is actually that you would enjoy? What is something that your drumming should be able to do? What is something that you would enjoy, a drummer that you want to be? And if you uncover that, then it's much easier to find whatever fits that. Mm-hmm. And then there's only a couple of things actually that fit that and that get you forward. And so you have to figure out what you want a little bit, maybe answer a couple of questions for yourself, and then you find the things that hopefully help you on that path. I get this feedback a lot because we're all in that same situation where we get a lot of information now, and people say like, this is something you can practice, what you should practice, and there's no shortage of that. But then it's like, but how do I do that? And what happens after I got the information? How do I go about it? How do I make progress? How do I structure my practicing? How often should I practice? How long should I practice? How many different things should I practice? So that's why this book is basically a helper to explain a couple of fundamentals that are at play whenever you practice, and that are not an invention of me, but that are just how our brain works and how our body works. And if you work with these things, there's almost no way not to make progress. And when you work against these things, it's very hard to do so. And so it's basically a practice plan maker, this book. So if you follow the steps and you do what's in the book, at the end you will end up with a practice plan that's specifically and custom made for you, and where you know, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what will get me forward. And I first had to design it for myself because I was overwhelmed as well, or I sometimes felt I don't make enough progress, but yeah, it's good to have a little bit of structure there, and this book helps getting there. Yes, I mean, the book is written from a lot of examples are from me as from a drum perspective, but the principles apply to whatever music instrument you want to make progress on. So yes, there are even some examples for bass players and singers and guitarists. But
it's very important.
Very important, but there but there are of course a lot of examples from my life. I use myself as a bad example very often for people to learn from, and to hopefully save some time. You know, like I would have wished to have this book when I was starting out, or at least a little bit earlier. And I think with the things that I found out there, you can really get faster to better results. So, the book is basically made pretty chronologically. So when you start at the top and you follow the steps, that's basically what I would recommend. And the first step is sets the table a little bit and says, you know what, and this is a tip I would give, record a whole practice session of yours, and just to see what you're actually doing. Because there is a lot of power in the way how we practice. What we practice is different for everyone, right? You have to select that later, and there's a process in there to how to do that, how to select it. But how you practice, the process itself, will decide whether you make progress or not, or whether it's frustrating, or whether you can build stuff up or not. And that's why we will look under the hood and really see, like, okay, what happens in the practice room? And sometimes we think, oh, we're very focused and we do this and that. But the how it feels is sometimes very different to what actually happens. And what a first step to do is to just practice how you always practice, record the whole thing, and then listen to it. And very often it's a very painful moment to realize, oh my gosh, like, oh, I'm not practicing what I wanted to practice. I play a lot of other stuff. I waste a lot of time. Maybe I take a phone call in between. I drink some water. So to be like, okay, maybe and the first lesson that comes from that is maybe I should separate playing and practicing. Just playing, having fun, very important. But practicing then to be like, okay, what is it I want to do? What is it I want to make progress on? And to separate those two, because they sometimes poison each other a little bit, right? So a little bit of practicing, a little bit of playing, then you feel guilty about the playing. You shouldn't feel guilty about the playing. It's beautiful. Like, play to some music, have fun. But then when it's time to practice, I work with all kinds of things. I have a timer. I write down what I do. I make recordings, before and after recordings, and these are all tools that almost trick you into good behavior, that help you to be more productive, to see your progress, and to also have a very accomplished feeling every time, to be like, oh, you know what? The time today was not wasted, the time was productive, and I can prove it to myself, I see it. So that would be my first tip, to first look how your practicing is, and then to separate playing and practicing, and to keep them nice and separate and clean. There is a saying that says, you never really lose motivation, you just lose sight of what you really want. So as soon as you really figured out what would really turn you on, what is really something that you like, and then you make sure that what you're practicing is connected to that, that's one step. There are basically two things. Motivation gets lost first when you lose touch with why you're doing it. And this is a good question. Kids are very good at that, right? When you deal with kids, they always say, why? It's a good question, because when you spend time in the practice room and you focus and stuff, there has to be a reason why you do it. So you define why you do it, something that you find attractive and nice, and you make sure that this is connected to what you're actually practicing, that it gets you there. The second thing is, when you're not sure whether the practicing really will get you there. And for that, it's great to prove your progress to you. Sometimes people say, like, well, how do I know that I progress? Well, by proving it to you. You make a recording before and you make a recording afterwards. And then when there's a difference in some progress, you know that wasn't a waste of time. Practicing actually works, and it's fun to make that progress. When you prove yourself your progress constantly, this discipline and stuff really becomes unnecessary, because it's something you look forward to. It's like you almost can't wait to be like, oh man, this much in 20 minutes, let's do it again tomorrow. So this is great for beginners and advanced people, for me as well. Yes, we did this today at the camp, where someone had something that he couldn't play, and we really said like, okay, let's take 10-20 minutes, and at the end he was able to master it, and we had a recording from before and a recording from after. And this also is great, because sometimes we think, 20 minutes, it's not enough time. It's like, you can get a lot of stuff done in 20 minutes if you really practice deliberately, you separate playing and practicing, you know what you're doing, and you use a couple of little helpers, like the recording and the timer and the journaling. So yes, I lead a journal. This sounds maybe complicated. It's basically like I practice and I just write down, maybe I have a different tempo from yesterday, or maybe I had to change something about it. Maybe I practice a different part of the exercise. So I just write that down. It has a couple of benefits. The first is, when I start to practice, I open up this thing and I know immediately where I should start. Very often when people practice, they take a lot of time to warm up and to get comfortable and to think about, what should I practice and what did I do last time, maybe it's this. You waste a lot of time that way. And also an exercise you can do is to just write down what you do every time. A student of mine figured out once that said like, I don't make enough progress. And then I said like, just write down what you do every time you practice. That's the only thing. And then he figured out, I do something different every day. So there is not much progress that can be made. You build things up. If you do one thing, you attack it again, and then something comes up. So I don't waste any time in the beginning. I know immediately where to start, and I know what I've been doing. And later on, it can serve as an archive, and I can learn from myself. I can know half a year ago, like, I did this exercise. Can I still do it? Do I want to give it another shot? Or I find out which exercise works better, which exercise works less. So I learn a lot about myself. I know exactly where I am, and it gets me going quicker. These are the three main things.
Thank you so much, Benny.
Big pleasure.
Thank you for respond by all answer, and thank
I'm
you.
so happy that this.
Thank you so much. Otra vez. Thank you for inviting me and stay with you here, and it's an honor for me.
It's a big pleasure to have you here, and I'm so happy that this book is now out in Spanish and that you can all read it now, and I hope it will do a lot of good. And
Y la verdad es que ha sido muy revelador todo esto. Todo esto ha sido muy guay, porque habían muchísimas fisuras que yo tenía ahí que necesitaba ver con alguien que realmente me diese su punto de vista. O que simplemente me dijese, no, mira, en vez de ir por aquí, vete por este lado, que va a ser mucho mejor y va a ser mucho más fácil. Lo bueno de tener a un bicharraco como Benny Greb, entre otros, en este tipo de drum camps, es que en mi caso habían 17 personas contando conmigo. ¿Qué pasa? Que tienes la posibilidad de preguntar, tienes mucho tiempo y tienes la posibilidad de preguntarle, y él va a tener la posibilidad también de podértelo explicar de una manera muchísimo más despacio, sin ningún tipo de estrés, porque hay muchos más alumnos. Todo es todo lo contrario cuando vas a ver un clinic o lo que sea, que aquello pues bueno, va a lo que va y ya está. Entonces ha sido muy guay. Todos teníamos nuestro blog de notas, que aparte nos lo daba la organización y demás, y eso era muy importante porque nos hizo ver muchísimas cosas que a lo mejor nosotros tenemos ahí en plan cómo nosotros poder gestionar nuestro tiempo de una manera mucho más eficiente. Y ya no solamente para nosotros, sino también si eres profesor, si tienes alumnos y demás, eso también te va a ayudar a que puedas mostrarles el camino que tú a lo mejor no has tenido. Y eso está muy guay. Eso está muy guay para que la gente pueda ir aprendiendo y pueda dar pasos mucho más seguros. No se trata de darlos más grandes ni más rápidos, no, sino mucho más seguros. Entonces ha estado muy guay. Y por fin, como ya he dicho, he llegado aquí a mi casa. Ha sido un viaje duro porque ya os digo que me tengo que coger 5 trenes, aparte coche y demás, pero ha valido la pena. Mi conclusión de todo este viaje es que si tuviese que volverlo a hacer, no me lo pensaría tanto como me lo estuve pensando, ¿no? No ha sido aquí como, venga, ahora, ¿sabes? Sino te lo piensas un poco, miras a ver las posibilidades que hay y demás y cual. No me lo pensaría tanto porque lo he disfrutado mucho. Sobre todo he disfrutado la parte esta cuando ya acababas y te ibas con Benny, con los amigos, ¿no? Con toda la gente del Drunk Camp y compartías tu vida, ¿sabes? O sea, compartías las cosas, tal. Había muy buen rollo. Entonces, ha sido muy beneficioso en todos los sentidos, en todos los sentidos. Si alguien me pregunta, oye, Seven, ¿crees que debería hacer un Drunk Camp? Yo le diría, sin duda alguna tienes que hacer un Drunk Camp en tu vida, o todos los que puedas, porque realmente dan muchísimo juego, sobre todo con gente que te puede guiar, con gente que te puede guiar y que te puede dar una visión un poco más, no sé, diferente a la visión que normalmente nosotros tenemos. Y está muy guay. Hay muchísimas cosas, como ya os digo, en Seven Drums que han sido dadas y que han sido como en plan de, sí, esto es lo que está guay, y otras que no han sido dadas, pero que necesitaba yo ponerlas un poco en mi cabeza, en su sitio, y esto ha sido muy revelador. Así que, por supuesto, recomendable el 100% de todo lo que son los camps. Así que, amigos míos, si os ha gustado, espero que realmente le deis al like, porque me he hecho un viaje de cojones, ¿sabes? En serio. Que le deis al like. Que también que pongáis también en la parte de abajo los comentarios, si os gusta, si no os gusta, si queréis más, si os gustaría ver algún concepto o no, o simplemente porque estos conceptos poco a poco los voy a ir yo integrando en mi manera, no solamente de tocar, sino de enseñar. Y después también pues deciros que os suscribáis, que no se tarda absolutamente nada, darle a la campanita, así te avisará de cuando sacamos vídeo. Y realmente el que os suscribiros es que no os va a costar nada porque es totalmente gratis, y tenéis muchísimos vídeos a vuestra disposición. Recordad algo importante, yo soy Seven Rodríguez, esto es Seven Drums, como siempre digo, amigos míos, sed felices.